believe that all biological analogies should start with Mardi Gras. It's the end of Mardi Gras, and you have these drunk reactive oxygen species, right? Smacking into things, breaking windows, spray painting cars. And you've got the New Orleans Police Department, the glutathione and the melatonin, coming onto Bourbon Street, handcuffing themselves to those reactive oxygen species and getting them off of Bourbon Street. But what happens when the New Orleans Police Department gets overwhelmed? They take those reactive oxygen species and they put them in a paddy wagon so that they can't run around and spray paint cars and bust windows. And then when the New Orleans Police Department replenishes the glutathione, replenishes the melatonin, then they can handcuff themselves to those reactive oxygen species and get them off of Bourbon Street. And that's why we say that the ESS60 molecule is the boss buffering oxidative stress system.
Electricast. Welcome to Season 4 of Transforming 45. I'm your host, Lisa Boat, and this season we're stepping fully into our power. The heat, the hormones, the heartbreak, the healing. This is midlife, raw and redefined. Each episode, you'll hear stories of humans who are rewriting the rules, reclaiming their bodies, their desires, their voices. This is where we stop shrinking, start shining, and remember who the hell we are. Because midlife isn't a crisis, it's an awakening. Let's get transforming 45. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Transforming 45. This week is going to be a fascinating conversation. I'd love to welcome Chris Burres, who is the founder and chief scientist of MyVitalC, the company behind a Nobel Prize-winning molecule, credited with the longest longevity experiment in history, extending life by an incredible 90%. I've got a lot of questions about that. Chris is a published author, podcast host, patent holder, and even a master of comedy improv. He's built a career at the intersection of innovation and humor, making complex science not only accessible, but downright entertaining. His mission? Helping people live longer, healthier, happier, pain-free lives through the power of scientific discovery. I love a scientist with a sense of humor. Welcome to the show, Chris. I'm so glad you're here today.
Lisa, thank you so much for having me.
All right, so let's start at the beginning. Chris, who are you and how did life introduce you to this version?
So I love the question. I've been to different presentations and they're like, who are you? And people always go with like what they do, right? So I'm going to do a little bit different because as I think about that and as I've kind of assessed that, I'm a dancer. Now, I've never done professionally dancing. I've always been pretty good at dancing. My mom was a ballerina. In fact, I met my wife dancing. It is one of the things that brings me so much joy that who am I? I'd like to say I'm a dancer. Would I like to have had a career as a professional dancer? Absolutely. I did not have that. I think improv artist is another one. I love the kind of playing with words and really connecting with people on humor. I really enjoy that. Now, you might be leaning in the direction of why am I here? Why do I have a lab coat? Why do I work in a lab? I am not a doctor. Why are all these things in place? So I started manufacturing a molecule with my business partner back in 1991. The molecule and we'll get into it, but the molecule, it's a carbon nanomaterial molecule. And it ended up being in, as you kind of mentioned in the intro, in the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals in history. And that's peer-reviewed published research. We'll probably get into a lot of the background story where I didn't actually want to get into the supplement space and tried really hard not to be in the supplement space. Really, because I think it's a challenge space. Eventually, our customers said, you need to get into this space. You need to deliver a high quality product. And so we did. And now, being responsible for the molecule that is the subject of the single longest longevity experimental results on mammals in history, now squarely cemented in the longevity space.
That's fascinating. And I can't wait to get into that part of the conversation. I want to wind back to the who am I question, however, because a dancer was not what I anticipated you saying. I really love when people don't lead with their job or what they do, because there's such a difference between doing and being. And I'm fascinated to know what led when you are, because all of the things you mentioned about who you are were in the arts space.
Mm-hmm.
So, what in all of that love of the arts, what led you into science?
Wow. So first, let me tweak that question a little bit. So if at some point prior probably to being I would have never said I was an artist. I just don't picture that. Now, I've kind of grown into I'm very analytical. I have a son, he's 15 years old, and he's super analytical, and it's incredibly irritating at times. And I see in him me, right, when I was his age. Just like things are either black or white, and there's no kind of gray in the middle, and then that's how life is. And that is not where artists tend to live, exist, or thrive, certainly. So when people hear that I did comedy improv, a lot of them are like, oh, were you like a theater geek? Nope. I didn't do any theater. I wasn't in any plays. I did once. I actually went to one debate tournament and never went back to another tournament. I didn't enjoy that process. I thought the reason debate would be good for me is because I like to argue and I often win. And so I thought, let me go into debate. And nope. I don't really sit there. I do sit more squarely and have always sit more squarely in the science realm. And it is the science realm that took me into studying engineering, mechanical engineering. And that was a course of work that was needed when my business partner was trying to manufacture this molecule we'll be talking about today, ESS60. And so that's really kind of what there was no transition from art to science. It was just science. And I happen to do a couple things that are artistic. And I will say improv has never really felt artistic to me, which is probably my own dysfunction. But yes, I can do accents and I have fun and there's emotions on stage and all of that stuff. But it really feels like a mental break for me when I'm on stage. Everything that I'm gonna do, just kind of like this podcast, everything that I'm gonna get and I'm supposed to talk about is gonna come from Lisa. And so I have to be really good at listening to Lisa. In this case, obviously, I have stories that I've told a number of times and I get to go into them. And still, everything's going to come from Lisa. Because, like, if you're like, who are you? And I'm like, there's this molecule and it lived 90% longer. And I don't even listen to the question. It's a disaster, right? Where I'm the disaster, not you. So I kind of don't see it as art, although I'm sure a lot of other people do. I don't know. I was all over the place, maybe more like an artist than a scientist.
Yeah,
Answer that question.
so as a former educator, if you had said, a response to a question, I would have held you accountable to the question. So we would have come back to it eventually. But the reason that I find it so interesting is in my last couple of years as an educator, I was on a team called Program and Innovation. And in schools, STEM is a big
Mm,
theme, but
yep.
we always called it STEAM because we included arts in STEM. And I think one of the things that people don't think about is how much creativity is actually necessary in science to move things forward, and how important including humor and beauty and all of the things that come from the humanities, that come from the arts, is what creates a more fulsome human as a scientist who is creating something that maybe hasn't existed before.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Like you look at the famous scientists of long ago, they were also the amazing composers. They were also the amazing, like just everything artists and scientists. And it was probably when I was maybe even 3/4 of the way through college, maybe even outside of it, that it kind of dawned on me that good engineers are actually very creative. The tools are locked in, right? There's limited tools, if you will, but that's also true of an artist, right? If you decide to go with one, well, there's no limitation until you decide that you want to limit yourself to a particular medium. And then you're figuring out how to creatively use that medium. In the case of engineering, you're like, oh, I'm going to use steel instead of plastic or what, like, do you have this creative medium? And the best engineers are actually creative. I couldn't agree more.
And it's the thing that I worry about with the focus on STEM, that we are doing that to the exclusion of everything that feeds our souls as humans. And what will happen when we have a generation who have only been exposed to STEM
Mm.
and have lost the humanity of everything that goes with it? So I think that that conversation is really important. So In that, tell me about the journey of the molecule, because this to me is fascinating.
Yeah, and a lot of this is in my book. So I have a book called Live Longer and Better, and a lot of this is in the book. The molecule was discovered in 1985 at Rice University, which is actually here in Houston, where our lab is based. The three scientists who discovered the molecule actually won the Nobel Prize for that discovery in 1996. So kind of a short 11 years from discovery to being awarded the Nobel Prize. And the molecule actually, the reason they won the Nobel Prize is because the molecule performs as well or better than the current best material in almost every application. So it makes better inks, better batteries, better tires, better photocells. And this is when people get nervous. They're like, isn't this a health supplement? Nobody listening to this woke up, looked out at their car and thought, I wonder what part of my car battery I should be consuming for my health on a daily basis. And then the story actually gets a little bit worse first. So I'm holding up the model of an ESS60 molecule. And if you're listening, just imagine a soccer ball where the lines on the soccer ball represent the bonds between the carbon atoms. So you have a spherical molecule of 60 carbon atoms, and 20 of the shapes on the exterior, like the panels on the soccer ball, 20 of those shapes are reminiscent of benzene. Now, benzene is ubiquitous in our society and is necessary for modern society to offer up as evidence. Look around wherever you're at. Everything that's plastic would be gone without the benzene ring. It is the foundational molecule for plastics. A lot of detergents, a lot of medications, including aspirin, have the foundational molecule of benzene. But when benzene is by itself, it's known to be toxic and known to be carcinogenic. So we got 20 of these shapes on the exterior of this ESS60 molecule. They thought it would be toxic. They put it in that toxicity study. Instead of being toxic, the test subjects that they gave it to, in this case it was Wistar rats, lived 90% longer than the control group. So that's the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals in history, peer-reviewed published research. And you can imagine that's the study that changed me from being, I like to call myself a happy-go-lucky carbon nanomaterial scientist, and transitioning into a supplement, the chief scientist of a supplement company, which did actually take, another, 2013 until 2017, really the beginning of 2018, when we started bringing this to market. And if it's okay, I'll talk a little bit about that journey because it's kind of interesting. So this study comes out in mid-2020. These Wistar rats live 90% longer. And about mid-2013, we start getting these phone calls from this wacky group of people called biohackers. I can say that affectionately now because I'm now a biohacker. And they called us and they were like, how much of this stuff should we be consuming? And my business partner and I, what we heard was that stuff that you sell to research institutions around the world that is really good in inks, batteries, tires, and photocells, how much of that stuff should I be consuming? And my business partner and I thought the exact same thing. We thought zero. We actually added not for human consumption to our labeling in mid-2013. If you surveyed the literature, it was clear it was safe, right? Especially with this 90% extension of life in this kind of University of Paris study. We were just conservative carbon nanomaterial. I wish I could tell you I was so smart and like, oh, there's this study and it's going to make a great supplement and we can be, great entrepreneurs and save the world. Was not that smart. So every quarter we're getting together and talking about, do we want to get into the supplement industry? And the reason that we were having this conversation is because we continued to get phone calls, 2 to 3 phone calls per week from, again, this crazy, wacky group of biohackers, which sounded something like this. It was hey, Chris, my knee pain is gone. And I was like, hey, Joe, you mean the knee pain of your rat? Because it literally says not for human consumption on your labeling. And Joe was like, yeah, I got it. So, hey, if my rat weighs 275 pounds and does HIIT training on Tuesdays and Thursdays, should my rat take extra servings on those Tuesdays and Thursdays? So we know what's going on and we're okay with it because in the literature, it was clear that it was safe. We're still conservative, so we still have not for human consumption on our labeling. That didn't change until the latter part of 2017. In that time frame, I actually found a peer-reviewed published research paper that showed that 50% of the supplements that are on the market don't have in them what they say they have in them. So every quarter, Robert and I are getting together. Do we want to get into the supplement industry? And I call it a challenged industry. We're very happy with the extremely high standards of delivering commercial quantities of carbon nanomaterials to research institutions around the world. And so, no, no, no. Finally, at the end of 2017, a guy with a big YouTube following that's how it always happens these days, right? Started sharing all the benefits he was getting, taking it on a daily basis. And then our phone went from ringing 2 to 3 times per week to 10 times a day. So now, again, I wish I were smarter sooner. It smacks us in the face. This is an entrepreneurial opportunity bigger than we realized. We also looked back to that peer-reviewed published research paper where 50% of the supplements on the market don't have in them what they say they have in them. We knew that was going to happen in this space. We're the oldest and longest manufacturer of this molecule on the planet, and we have the lab, we have the expertise. We really felt it was an obligation to come into the industry and provide a high quality product. And then before we did that, kind of last piece, we asked ourselves 2 questions. The first question is a moral question. Are we comfortable selling it? Morally comfortable selling it? And then the next is the legal question, which is the FDA here in the States, FDA and FTC. You got to cross the T's, you got to dot the I's, and we're doing all of that. So finally in 2018, we started bringing this to market, and my kind of life changed because now I'm no longer the chief scientist of I am still the chief scientist of a carbon nanomaterial scientist, but I'm also the chief scientist of a supplement company, and all sorts of things changed at that.
Yeah, it is a really interesting journey. And I want to kind of rewind a little bit back to really understand what it is that this molecule is doing. So let's talk about it in the concrete form first. So what was it doing to make batteries and those sort of things better?
Yeah, so let's talk about this amazing molecule. So again, I'm holding up the model. Imagine a soccer ball. This ESS60 molecule has 6 planes through it, that it's symmetrical, which is very unusual, makes it incredibly strong. In fact, you can fire it at 15,000 miles an hour at a plate of steel, where most molecules will just shred apart. This molecule, I kind of picture it, will like kind of compress and then bounce right back, right? So it doesn't shred apart. So really, really strong molecule. There is actually a new symbol in chemistry because of this molecule. I think that's how you know you're going to win a Nobel Prize, right? If you're adding a new symbol to the language of chemistry. So the @ symbol, from our email addresses. So if you have lanthanum at this molecule, that means lanthanum is physically trapped inside the void, right? The interior of the soccer ball molecule. It's not covalently bonded with the exterior. It's not ionically bonded with the exterior. It's physically trapped inside of it, this was the first molecule that was even possible for. So there's a new symbol in chemistry because of it. From way back in the 90s, we know that it can hold up to 6 negatively charged particles. So that makes it theoretically at that point a great antioxidant. It is the largest molecule to display quantum behavior, right? So you may be familiar with the kind of double slit test. Quantum particles end up going through on both, even though there's one particle. This molecule does the same thing. So it's the largest molecule displaying quantum behavior. And yeah, so these are some of the reasons that it is used for industrial applications. And I'm so hopeful. So the kind of pet name for this molecule is the buckyball, right? Because of Buckminster Fuller, he's the one who brought to prominence the geodesic dome. This shape is exactly the geodesic dome, and so it's called a buckyball. And I think I look forward to the day that it gets into batteries, because I just think a Bucky battery would be really, really cool. I use Bucky batteries, would be nice.
So what I'm hearing you saying is that it has the potential to make things stronger and to trap free radicals, things that we
Yes.
don't want in our bodies. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we've talked about it in terms of the concrete. So what is happening in our bodies in terms of longevity with this?
So I'll share kind of my journey, right? So now I wake up in 2018. I'm the chief scientist of a supplement company of a molecule that's responsible for the longest longevity experimental result on mammals. And then my role is to figure out, like, how is this working? And I'll share our most consistent testimonial is people take it in the morning, they report mental focus and energy during the day, and then better sleep that night. And we know, like, if you get better sleep, you will improve your mental, physical, and emotional well-being. So that was kind of the first place. And then the next place was, I looked at the landscape and what does the medical community tend to think causes aging, right? They don't all agree because, that's how science works, but they tend to think that it's an oxidation and an inflammation process. In terms of oxidation, there's an ad hoc study on the web that shows us to be 172 times more powerful than vitamin C. There's peer-reviewed published research that shows us to be 125 times more powerful than vitamin C. So I'm in Texas. We put a big old check mark next to antioxidant. With inflammation and discussions of inflammation, we have to be really careful. Here in the States, the FDA equates conversations of inflammation with the diseases of inflammation, which are also the diseases of aging: arthritis, Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, cancers. So if I come on to your show and I say we address inflammation, at least chronic inflammation, the FDA hears me saying that I cure cancer and I cure cardiovascular disease, which is not what we're here saying, right? There is so much research and very expensive research that would need to go in to be able to make those claims. What the FDA will allow us to say is that we address inflammation as it relates to exercise-induced inflammation. So we've all, maybe had a tough workout or even just walked longer than normal and woken up the next day and felt that inflammation in our body. We're allowed to say that we address that. So we have, I don't know, that's not a big old, it's a check mark on inflammation. Pseudo checking off anti-inflammatory, definitely checking off antioxidant, and even antioxidant. The BOSS theory, right? So this stands for buffering oxidative stress system. It says this, and it's the supporting reasons behind it are, first off, this ESS60 molecule is known to get into the mitochondria. That's peer-reviewed published research. And I've already mentioned it can hold up to 6 negatively charged particles on the exterior of the cage. So here's how we think the BOSS theory is working. Your mitochondria, right? Powerhouse of every cell. There's between 50 and 5,000 mitochondria in every cell in your body, except for blood cells, which actually have 0, and your brain and neurons, which have 2 million. It is amazing how much energy our nervous system uses relative to all of our other systems. Again, mitochondria, powerhouse. Like every powerhouse, there's a negative byproduct. You think about your car going down the road, there's exhaust. You think about a power plant, there's smoke coming out of the smokestack. In the case of mitochondria, there's reactive oxygen species. I like to picture these like little bumper cars, right? Everything they're smacking into, they're causing rust, oxidative stress, oxidative damage, ultimately inflammation. Inside the mitochondria, you've got 2 antioxidants that are typically responsible for managing those reactive oxygen species, and those are glutathione and melatonin. I like to pause here because melatonin, the sleep hormone, remember our most consistent testimonial involves sleep. So there's some nice synergies here. What happens when your mitochondria is stressed, right? So now it's producing more energy. It's also producing more reactive oxygen species and more than the glutathione and melatonin can manage. That's when they run around, these reactive oxygen species run around doing the damage that we just described. And that's where the ESS60 molecule comes in. So we know, again, from peer-reviewed published research, it's in there. We believe it holds up to 6 of these negatively charged reactive oxygen species, and then so that they can't run around and do damage. And then when that mitochondria gets back to homeostasis, it replenishes the glutathione and melatonin, then it can manage them properly. I've got a fun analogy for this, right? Because we just got all sorts of science geeky. I believe that all biological analogies should start with Mardi Gras. Have you ever because a lot of biology happens at Mardi Gras. So it's the end of Mardi Gras, and you have these drunk reactive oxygen species, right? Smacking into things, breaking windows, spray painting cars. And you've got the New Orleans Police Department, the glutathione and the melatonin, coming onto Bourbon Street, handcuffing themselves to those reactive oxygen species and getting them off of Bourbon Street. But what happens when the New Orleans Police Department gets overwhelmed? They take those reactive oxygen species and they put them in a paddy wagon, right? So that they can't run around and spray paint cars and bust windows. And then when the New Orleans Police Department replenishes the glutathione, replenishes the melatonin, then they can handcuff themselves to those reactive oxygen species and get them off of Bourbon Street. And that's why we say that the ESS60 molecule is the boss buffering oxidative stress system. Now, to kind of summarize this, we believe that we're reducing the negative impact of stressed mitochondria. And if you reduce the negative impact of stressed mitochondria, you should have what we have, which are head to toe testimonials.
All very, very interesting, fascinating. And I'm wondering, I know that women's bodies are under researched in
Yes.
medicine, in all things. Um, do you know that it responds to the same way in women's bodies?
Yeah, so our understanding is that it's working at the mitochondrial level. There really isn't a difference in mitochondria between men and women that we know. It's fascinating. You probably know this. A lot of people may not. That your mitochondria actually has separate DNA. It's a different DNA from this DNA of your cells, and it's actually passed down from the mom. So it's only the mom's DNA in the mitochondrial DNA that is in there. We actually think that this has the same point. Now, one of the things that we think, so my wife went through early onset menopause and forced me to put a menopause, actually I do have a menopause support bottle here because it really helped her when she was going through menopause. And one of the keys that I think is there is that you produce pregnenolone from your mitochondria. Pregnenolone is one of the key precursors to almost all of the sex hormones. And so if you've got better pregnenolone production, then you're going to have better downstream sex hormone production. And I think that's some of what's going on. Additionally, and right, because the body going through menopause and even going through the cycle is going through these dramatic hormonal shifts. So you're stressing your mitochondria, right? Like you're lucky you get to stress your mitochondria monthly or in this long phase of perimenopause. And again, if you're stressing the mitochondria, if what we're doing is reducing the negative impact of stressed mitochondria, then you're going to have kind of across the board benefits because your body's actually able to perform the way it's supposed to perform.
Right, because as I'm hearing you talk, I'm hearing all of the, all of the symptoms that we experience during perimenopause, right? Lack of sleep, muscle, bone, and joint pain, brain fog, so many things. You spoke specifically to sleep. So how are women, well, humans in general, using this to help improve their quality of life?
Yeah, so the how is fairly straightforward. Our product is the ESS60 molecule dissolved in a high quality extra virgin olive oil. So it will actually leave a peppery flavor at the back of your throat. Again, with as much of the ESS60 molecule that can get to dissolve in it. So we recommend 1 teaspoon or 5 mils for you Canadians, right?
Thank you.
5 mils every morning, and that's it. So on a daily basis. We like to map out what people will experience over about a 3-month period, right? Remember, most consistent testimonial, people take it in the morning, mental focus and energy during the day, better sleep at night. We look at month 1 as a focus and energy month, where you're really kind of noticing this focus and energy. And I've got one testimonial, a lady she's an influencer. We provided her some product. She took it in the morning and recorded a video that same night. And what she shared was she didn't finish her cup of coffee, right? If you're a coffee drinker, like that's a thing, right? Like that's an important thing. And I'll share prior to taking this regularly, before it was actually part of my coffee routine, I was a 2 and sometimes 3 cup of coffee a day person. I'm now like here, it's 11:30. I still have a little bit of my coffee left and I'll finish it because I'm thrifty. I probably should. I'm not finishing it because I feel tired and I need energy. And frankly, I don't even really need it. It's part of the, whatever the pomp and circumstance of coming in the morning, right? It's the routine. Smells delicious, tastes amazing, but I don't need it anymore. So that's kind of month 1, a focus and energy. I'll also add, if you're replacing olive oil for saturated fats, the literature is very clear that there will be some weight loss benefits. You do have to replace the saturated fats with a high quality extra virgin olive oil. Month 2, we start thinking about sleep. People notice the reason it drags into month 2, I think it's actually showing up earlier, is everyone gets a little bit more or a little bit less sleep every night, right? And typically the response from people who take the product is that it's better sleep, not necessarily more sleep. I'll share this. My business coach, the way he puts it is for 50 years, he needed an alarm clock to wake up. When he started taking MyVitalC on a regular basis, he wakes up before the alarm clock. Now he's going out to like business mixers, late night business dinners. None of that matters. He's still waking up before the alarm clock. until he goes without the product for about 10 days. That's when we believe it clears out of your system. So that's good to know. Then he starts to need the alarm clock again. So that's kind of month 2 sleep. Month 3, we really understand that it's impacting the mitochondria. I have to be really careful. I can't mention diseases. In fact, I'll throw this out. The FDA has not evaluated our product. It is not intended to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent any disease. Well, we start to see this reduction of the negative impact of stress mitochondria really starting to kick in kind of systemically. And what I'll share there is my father-in-law, he was actually using a cane to walk, and he had put on some weight because he'd really slowed down dramatically. He stopped needing the cane and started walking. Now, he lost a lot of weight, not because of our product, but because he actually started walking and exercising more. So that's kind of the systemic things we tend to see at about that 3-month part.
I'm glad you brought that up because one of the things that always sets off my caution alarms about supplements is when someone says, like, just do this and it will solve all your problems. And you are not saying that. Well, you have not said that one time during this interview. So I appreciate that. And it is, one of the things I'm most concerned about in the perimenopause and menopause conversation is this, that like just do this one thing and it will solve all your problems when everything is so nuanced. And so two questions. One, are there interactions with hormone therapy? And two, how is it supporting all the lifestyle factors? Because regardless of what you take or those sort of actions, all of the lifestyle factors still need to be in place. Sleep, stress management, nutrition, movement. Without those key components, nothing else is going to be as effective.
Yeah, no, great question. And you're right. If you have unhealthy habits, or you're not getting sleep, you're not getting proper nutrition, you're not exercising, this isn't going to solve those problems, right? We believe it can help in a lot of ways. We've already talked about sleep, right? So that's good. Again, good for your mental, physical, and emotional well-being. When you think about exercise, my current routine is I actually exercise in the morning. I come to the office, I make my coffee, and that's when I'm taking my product. But we have a number of influencers that we work with who say if they take it before they work out, they feel significantly less sore after the workout, right? So you've got some of that support in that place. Nutrition, it's olive oil, right? Olive oil is super popular right now, and for good reason. I love what Dr. Gundry says. He says the purpose of food is to get more olive oil into your mouth. That's its purpose. We all know that. We all know that to be true. And so this olive oil is a good component of that. And then with stress, I'm going to share this one testimonial because it really stuck out for me. So sends a product to this lady in the UK. She sends in her video. She starts the video with, "I'm in the middle of quitting smoking." If you've ever known somebody quitting smoking, my parents quit lots of times when I was growing up. It's not pleasant, right? They're moody. So I thought that the rest of this video was not going to be a good testimonial. And it went on to be actually a very good testimonial with this one piece that really sticks with me. She said, "I don't know exactly what's going on, but I find myself having a longer fuse with my toddler." Now, if you're a parent or really alive, you have a fuse with people, right? And when it's longer, that's better. When it's shorter, that's not as good. So it really, if you think about the fact that there's 2 million mitochondria in your brain, in your neurons, right? And if you're reducing the negative impact of stress mitochondria, we do believe we have a positive, it's not the end all be all, but that we have a positive impact on each of the things that you would need to continue to do in terms of lifestyle.
Okay. Thank you. And are there interactions with hormone therapy?
Yes. So at this point, there's tens of thousands of people who have taken this product. We do not have anybody who's come to us and reported any counter indications with any other supplements, with any other kind of lifestyle modification, with any other medications. It is our responsibility, if somebody reports serious adverse effects, for us to report those to the FDA. We have not had to report any of those because nobody's come to us with any. There are no contraindications. I will share this. If you're not used to taking 5 mils of an oil, then you will get some loose stool for a couple of days. Your body gets used to it, and then you're good to go. And if you're already taking kind of healthy oils regularly, you probably won't even notice anything.
So, in the study with rats, it talked about longevity being 90% longer. So, I presume that there are not human studies that are showing us that a human life lives 90% longer. What are you seeing in humans that is shifting that longevity?
Yeah. So just to kind of point out, if humans were to live 90% longer, then the average human would be 152. If you're like me, the first time I thought about that, I was like, oh, that's the oldest human. No, that would be the bell curve, and the middle of the bell curve would be 152. So there will never be any human longevity studies. It's just too long. There might be some sort of kind of, hey, these people are taking this product, and we're finding out that they're living longer. We're a very rare supplement company in that we continue to do research. We actually published in May of last year and June of this year. We continue to publish it, which is even more rare for supplement companies. In terms of human trials, we'll jump into this. So we're working on doing an HSCRP study. HSCRP stands for high sensitivity C-reactive protein. It's typically associated with cardiovascular disease. So it's a marker that you monitor to understand your cardiovascular disease risk. We had at A4M Longevity Fest that's in Vegas last year. A4M is the American Academy of Anti-Aging. We had a Dr. Lane Young came to our booth, and he said this. And after he said it, I said, you got to say it again on camera, right? So I have a video of this. He said, Chris, I don't care if you're male, female, pre-surgery, post-surgery, cardiovascular disease, otherwise healthy. Your product brings elevated HSCRP numbers into normal ranges, and he was talking from 9 to 0.9 in 4 to 8 weeks. Now, he also went on to say that we're also seeing improvements between 20 and 60% in HRV and sleep. And sleep's not a surprise. HRV, really a fantastic number to keep an eye on. But the number that we're going to do a study on is the HSCRP. I had a conversation with an oncologist after that. And when I mentioned 9, he said, in oncology, if you have an HSCRP of 9, we assume you have cancer until we prove otherwise. Right? So that's how dramatic that number was. It wasn't moving with Dr. Lane Young's protocols, now down into 0.9. Under 1 is considered normal. You really do want that to be lower. The lower, the better. So that's one of the studies that we're pushing forward. We're also just now, again, the theme of this podcast could be Chris wishes he was smarter, because we just started, we're in the process, we're designing the study for a migraine study. Now, the reason we're doing this, we can't claim that we're addressing migraines yet, but the reason we're doing this study, I'll give you, we have a number of kind of testimonies that drove this. First is my own. So I am the geeky guy you see in front of you. I have a spreadsheet back to 2014 that was tracking my 4 to 5 migraines per year. And I was trying to figure out, like, they're horrible, right? Go in the dark, turn the lights off. Yeah, no sound. And I was trying to figure out what was causing them so I didn't have to experience them. 4 to 5 per year. I started taking this product in 2018, beginning of 2018. I didn't get a single migraine for 18 months. So you're talking about, I should have had 6 or 7 at that time. When I got my next migraine, it was when I went off of the product to join our own sleep study. So 18 months, and then I got a migraine. I will share today, I get 1 or 2 migraines a year, but they are dramatically different. Actually, it starts with an aura, right? So it's a kind of a little sliver of your field of vision that looks like a kaleidoscope in my case. So the aura will get into my field of vision. It lasts about 15 minutes, and then I just go about my day, which is not what I was having, prior. My wife used to get 9 migraines per month. This was associated with going through perimenopause. And I remember the number 9 because she had a medication. They would only give her 9. And really, she was getting more like 13. She would just have to suffer through the remainder. It took, as it often does, it took me a while to convince my spouse to actually try this. What do you know about supplementation? And when she finally tried it, her migraines are down to 1 or 2 per month, or even every other month. That was way back in 2018. And if I were smart, I would have started a migraine study right away. So we're working on the design that's almost done with the company that we're coordinating with. And then we'll be launching this migraine study.
Which is really important because I know people suffer and there's very little treatment. And so that sort of hope is really important. One last thing I wanted to ask you before we wrap up. And I know you had said earlier your wife convinced you to create something specific for perimenopause, menopausal women. So what is it that is specific about that formulation that is supportive of this transitional time?
So in all transparency, which I always am, it's the same formula. Right. It is just so we actually have different packaging that says deep sleep, focus and energy, exercise recovery, and then party recovery, just to throw that out there. Those are all the same thing. And part of the reason that we'll put together different packaging is because if I, hold up a bottle of ours and I say, if I just keep it super simple and I say this one product gives you focus and energy during the day and helps you sleep at night, you're already thinking, I've never heard of anything that does that, right? Like those are they're literally opposite ends of the spectrums of impacts that I would expect on my physiology. And so that makes it very hard to talk about this. As soon as we start breaking out menopause support or party recovery, in that case, focus and energy, sleep, then we can start to have interesting conversations with people and talk about all the science and its impact at the mitochondrial level.
Thank you. I appreciate your transparency about that because in a time when menopause washing is a significant issue for women who are trying to navigate a landscape that is constantly shifting and changing, and there are constantly new products telling us to do this and to buy this, and this is what you need. Honesty goes a really long way. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
Chris, thanks so much for your time today. This has been really fascinating. All of the information for how to connect with Chris and find MyVitalC will be in the show notes, so make sure you check that out.
Can I create a link for your audience?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, unless you want something different, so Transforming 45, right? So myvitalc.com/transforming.
Yes.
And I'll just share on that page, we'll have a $30 off coupon, and we've got a special on that page, which is pretty cool. At the top of the page, I did a longevity summit. I interviewed 57 experts in longevity, Dave Asprey, Ben Greenfield, Dr. Stephen Gundry. I collected 18 biohacking tips from all of them, and then I consolidated them into 18 biohacking tips. That's free. We just need your email for that. That's at the top of the page. When you go into it, you can find, because we think in terms of 3 months, we've got a 2-bottle offer, a 3-bottle offer, and a 6-bottle offer. We also didn't get a chance to talk. I do have a cosmetic, which is unique. It's a peptide we call UTH29, Youth 29, the age all women want to stop aging at, as I have been informed by many, many women. And then the ESS60 activator. So that's unique. So that special is also on that page. And there's a further discount on the second button for subscription. Take advantage, even if you just want to try it once, take advantage of that subscription offer. You can cancel at any time. Our customer service team has 1,000 5-star reviews on Google. So they're not trained to talk you out of canceling their subscription. They're there to help, and they do a great job. I'll also add one last thing. So I have my book is on that page. You can buy it on Amazon, Live Longer and Better, $19.95. On that landing page, you can find it for $19.95. But I have a charity piece if you get an autograph. So $10, and I'll sign the book for you. 100% of that $10 fee goes to Operation Underground Railroad. You may remember the movie The Sound of Freedom, which was an amazing movie about a horrible topic, which is child sex trafficking. Should be off of our planet yesterday. Underground Railroad is doing an amazing job working to get to manage child sex trafficking. And so 100% of that signature fee goes to Operation Underground Railroad.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That is very important work. We know that now more than ever. And just around the skincare is essential, and we want everyone to feel as good as they want to feel. And women are beautiful at every age.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you for hanging out with me on Transforming 45. If you laughed, nodded, or had an oh wow moment, hit follow and share it with your favorite midlife human. Find me on Instagram at lboat and keep those transformations coming.
Electric acid.